everyone, and thank you for spending your time here on a lovely, I'm gonna guess like spring morning. I'm originally from Montreal, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm missing home right now very much. My daughter is visiting for her spring break, so I'm really honored to be here speaking this morning. So I'm going to share a little bit about myself and share a little bit about, I guess, how I really view the role that creativity plays in education and educational technology. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of kick it off from there. So a little bit about me. I do work on the education team at Adobe, and my role really focuses on supporting and advocating for student voice and teacher voice, both externally and internally at the company. So a lot of the work that I do is around teaching and learning, working with schools and districts, and really focusing on our mission, which is to inspire and empower the next generation to be lifelong creators. I'm also the co-author of the Google Infused and Microsoft Infused Classroom, but the work that I did in Montreal was some of the work that I'm really the most proud of, and that was working as a classroom teacher. I taught at Riverdale High School at the Lester B. Pearson School Board, and I also then worked at the district at the school board level as an itinerant teacher supporting all of our schools there. And what I worked on a lot was innovative programs. So a lot of the focus there was around digital citizenship. I helped create the digital citizenship program and brought Google Apps, Google Workplace, to the school board. So that was some of the work that I did. But in 2014, I moved over to the US, and now I live in South Florida. And long story short, I now work on the education team at Adobe. But what I really want to focus on today is really my passion and the role that I really believe that creativity plays when we're really kind of now in that kind of massive crossroads in education, which we have been for quite a while, I would say. But I'd say the last few months are even more compelling, and I'll share why I feel that way. Because I believe in my heart and soul, and then the work that I do, that creativity is a human right for students, and that students truly deserve the ability to be able to demonstrate their learning in ways that really matter to them. And that is a true part of my story today. If you have not noticed and you have not been on the internet, which I doubt, you or if your head has only been like under a cloud or a rock, then you've definitely heard about OpenAI and ChatGPT, and now we're kind of in the AI race. It's like the race for space, but it's the race for AI. And so this is definitely an area that is going to truly disrupt all elements of industry. But I'm watching it before my very eyes in the last few months have an incredible effect in education. But I'm not fearful at all, because I really do believe that there are many things that we can do to prepare our students for their future. And I want to focus in this few minutes that we have together on 3 ways that I think we can really harness the power of creativity and educational technology in the way that we approach teaching and learning. So I'm going to start with a couple stories, or just a few kind of ideas to consider. So there's something that is often incredibly terrifying, I think even more terrifying than AI, and that is this: it's the blank page. And when we say to students, just go do something, be creative, often what we will get from our students is this. We'll get bewilderment, avoidance, fear. And these are often the questions that we'll hear from our learners, right? I don't know what to do first. How can I get an A? And can I go to the bathroom, right? So we know that, we have to think about ways that we can really empower our students so that they can feel empowered by that process. And so I'm going to share a few ideas. The first one is really thinking about ways that we can reframe what matters most when creating. So instead of focusing on the final product or the grade, I want us to begin to think about focusing on the process of constructing knowledge and producing artifacts for students to become effective creators and communicators. So I work at Adobe, so of course there's really amazing digital tools that I work with, and there's a lot of ed tech tools that are available. And so we want to be able to help students use these incredible tools so that they can easily create and communicate their ideas with ease, and that's a really big benefit of the working in the digital space, and it's something that I've worked on for so many years. And I want to kind of share two kind of examples of that. There's when we look at like what we provide opportunities for learners in our class, there's often two different experiences, right? There's our analog experience, and then there's our digital experience. And so when we think about that analog digital creation, the analog creation journey, often the teacher will assign work, the student will read and annotate it, the student will create, maybe spending an hour or more doing that, and then the student will turn in their work, right? But when we look at it through the lens of like a digital creation journey, what happens for our learner is they are able to quickly iterate, remix, and have a lot more opportunity to make meaning of the work that they are engaging in. And they can do that rapidly, get feedback. And so when we look at this process, okay, and we just look at that time that it takes for a student to do a similar outcome of a task, it's really compelling to see how much that student can do and design, and all the skills that we can build through that digital experience. So very often, I had this question asked me one time when I came as a guest lecturer at McGill in the Department of Education with pre-service teachers. And they said to me, well, if a student wants to use Poster, I will let them use Poster and create a poster. And I said, of course, that's important, but I want us to consider why digital is really important for learners and how it really helps our learners excel and be able to personalize the work that they do in a meaningful way. So as you can see, this is about the same time frame. We've that the student is just starting out writing, and in the time that they can do that, there's so much more that they can do in the digital form. So that's the first kind of framing that I wanted to share. So at this point, when we help students through that process, we want them to be able to see how learning and creating can become joyful. And so we want our students to be able to understand why they got the grade that they got. We want them to be able to understand how to improve and create as and grow as a creator. And we want them to be excited that they can do this again. And so providing those scaffolding and the iterative process through that creative process is really important. The second thing that I want to share is how we can support each and every student's unique voice and vision. So this is an example from a dear friend of mine, Lisa Highfield. She is a creative educator who lives in California. And she shared this story of Ophelia to me when, and I was incredibly inspired. I am a learner who has dyslexia. My son has dyslexia. And very often as learners who sit in our classrooms, we will often come into contact with a lot of different artifacts that they might share. And very often, like, those artifacts might come across our our table and we look at them and we won't think twice about what they really say about the learner or what they're leaving out. So this is an artifact. And so if we look at this artifact, I'm asking you, like, what grade do you think Ophelia is in? So as we look at this artifact, we're thinking, well, what grade is she in? But ultimately, what I want us to think about is what does this artifact actually leave out about Ophelia? So Ophelia is a 4th grader, but by looking at the artifact, we wouldn't necessarily think that this is the grade work of a 4th grader because Ophelia has dysgraphia. But when we provide our learners with alternative opportunities to create and demonstrate their learning, we're able to see what is possible, right? And so based on this artifact, and I'll just play just for a second. And this is the same artifact, same poem, but just demonstrated in a creative and visual way.
And from the framed photos of my mom and dad and the heart-shaped painted plate, I am from loving and kindness and time to hit the high. I am from the small cherry tree in my veggie garden, whose leaves are beautiful.
So I'll stop at that. What's really powerful is that by looking at one artifact and saying, okay, we know that this learner has difficulty as a writer, but the reality is Ophelia is a poet, right? Ophelia has incredibly complex ideas as a poet and as a learner. And so when Lisa asked Ophelia, how do you feel about your poem? This is what Ophelia said.
I think hope, hope and like happiness and love. Because like no one ever said that I was like a really good writer.
So Ophelia felt hope, happiness, and love because nobody ever said that she was a good writer. So Ophelia is a 10-year-old who's gone through almost all of her elementary years, never feeling successful as a writer. And so as someone who also has struggled through my primary years with dyslexia, and the way that we see ourselves as learners is very telling, right, of what we are going to be able to accomplish when we don't believe that we're capable. So in the work that I do, I've always felt that it is so essential that we're providing our learners with alternative opportunities to demonstrate their learning. And finally, the third kind of piece that I wanted to touch on was the importance of helping students reflect on their journey of growth. So helping students document, curate, and reflect on their journey as learners. And this is an example of Amy Suker, and she is a 12th grade student. And when what she was doing is applying for college, and what she did in her class, because she wants to be a designer, is she put together her portfolio. So let me go ahead and just share that. And so when we are able to provide those opportunities for students to, create their portfolios, put their artifacts, create those opportunities for the time for reflection and curation, these are the really valuable elements that ultimately will empower our learners to be successful in their journey as creatives. So when we look at Abby's reflection, I used to think that if something didn't come 100% from my head, that it wasn't original or creative, then it wasn't, but now I understand that all creative people find inspiration from other sources. So we want to be able to grow our students as creatives. We want to be able to think about how we can reframe the creative process, uplift students' unique voices, and ensure reflection on their journey. I wholly, in my whole body and soul and gut, believe that it is essential to be able to provide our learners with these opportunities. And it's really not that complicated, you know, to switch the way that we interpret the experiences that happen in our class. So I'm excited to share more in our panel discussion.